I've told you, I'm very happy being single and no, I don't need any more books on how to pick up girls. I shot a glare at the book that spontaneously flipped itself open on my desk. I know you mean well, Otis, but really, I'm fine. The book closed its cover by itself, as if sadly set down by an invisible hand. All I want is to be done with this graveyard shift so that I can go home and sleep. But I'll welcome your book recommendations for succulent gardening. I've been into that lately. I offered, trying to sound friendlier so that Otis wasn't so put down. Otis has been a part of this library as long as I can remember. Not all ghosts are bad ghosts. Otis has saved my life more times than I can count, and I own 1 or 100. You see, the problem is that this library is trying to kill me. Well, not me specifically. It's tried to do that to every one of the people who have worked the graveyard shift at this library, as far as they can remember. Why not just open the library during the daytime only, you say? Well, that would be a grand old idea. Except it's a cursed library that requires being open all day and all night, lest a terrible curse befall this small town out in the middle of nowhere. In other words, this library being active is like a prison lock on demons that would really love to no longer be kept under guard of a glorified prison warden, me, so that they can possess and curse this entire little town. Someone has to make sure the occult books don't spontaneously go missing or go start casting spells by themselves. And yes, we tried to burn them and run them through the paper shredders. All that got shredded was the paper shredder itself. Well, it's almost 1 a.m., I said to the empty air, just as several alarms at my desk had started to ring, signaling that it was 5 minutes until 1 o'clock in the morning. I turned off the multiple alarms and set them again for tomorrow night. Never could be too careful. Okay, Otis, I'm gonna start the routine, I said as I took a blindfold out of a drawer and put it on myself, while my hand blindly reached for the dust cloth and a bottle of surface cleaner that I always used. The routine was really a list of rules that were to be followed every night. I had survived this long at this job because I was particularly uncreative and just very good at following the rules. A teacher's pet type of person, if you will. By now, I had had these memorized by heart. But to sum them up, there are a few rules that are active the whole night, and some rules that are only active at certain times. Rule number 1. The light above the librarian receptionist desk should never be turned off. Please change the light bulb every 3 months, sooner if you wish to be more careful. Rule number 2. If you feel a heavy sense of dread and a hand upon your shoulder, drinking water or another beverage should help. Rule number 3. Books will sometimes fall off the shelves and open themselves to pages of the occult. Leaving them for too long will allow the demons to copy and draw demonic circles and other spell work into the ground. Please replace them on the shelf as soon as possible. Rule number 4. Make sure all doors to the outside of the library are locked and deadbolted. Rule number 5. At 1 a.m. to 2 a.m. you may see dark figures looking through the windows and glass panels at you. Though the figures are black, their eyes are wide-eyed and bloodshot. Avoid looking into the eyes by any means possible. Failure to do so will result in the figures being able to break through the glass. Rule number 6. At 1 a.m., the figures will be watching to see if you are working. Please either mop or wipe surfaces down to keep up an appearance of working. Failure to do so will agitate the figures, possibly allowing them to break through the glass. Rule number 7. At 2 a.m., you may stop cleaning. The figures should be gone from the windows. By now, a new figure should have appeared in the library, in a chair in Section B. You are to pull up a chair and stay in the lobby for the next hour. If at any point the figure gets up or looks at you, you are to avoid speaking a single word to the figure until 3 a.m., at which the figure should disappear. Do not answer any of the figure's questions or comments. Do not talk to yourself and do not talk to anyone. You cannot wear a blindfold during this time, in case the figure tries to steal the occult books. Rule number 8. 3 a.m. is the most challenging part of the night. Illusions and hallucinations may begin to befall you during the witching hour. It is imperative that you show no signs of fear and an uplifted mood if at all possible. Every reaction of shock, facial expression of fear, or dread will allow the apparitions to gradually possess you. Every mistake will make it easier for the next mistake to happen. Failure to endure until 5 a.m. will result in an irreversible loss of your soul. It was almost time that the figures started to appear in the windows. I found that the best way to not look into their eyes was to not look at all. I double blindfolded myself too, one with a Velcro strap, and then I layered one of those nighttime sleeping masks on top. One time I tripped and the blindfold had ripped off my head end. Well, let's just say that I'll never make that mistake again. The nice thing about the make sure you appear working by cleaning is that you don't actually need to clean well, so long as you look busy and you're ignoring the creepy figures in the windows. I randomly felt for a bookshelf and then sprayed it and began wiping it down, trying to feel where the moisture was. After a few minutes of cleaning, I would feel a hand on my shoulder pushing me, but I could never tell if it was the malicious hand on your shoulder, or if it was just Otis helpfully pushing me along so that I didn't stay too long in one spot. I heard some tapping on the glass. Ignoring it, I sprayed down a counter and haphazardly wiped it down the best that I could. Tap, tap, tap. It was getting louder. Finally, it sounded like something was pounding a fist on the glass, and it sounded like the glass was going to give way and shatter. However, I just ignored it, though my natural instinct made me want to take off my blindfold and check that they weren't breaking through the glass. I was a good boy following the rules. I could barely hear it, but these soft whispers of some syllables began drifting from the doors. Just like the tapping, the whispers became louder, demanding to be let in until they became frightfully loud and human-like yells that pierced the dead quiet of the library. "Let me in, please. Please, let me in. Let me in, let me in, let me in." There was a time that a foolish, younger version of myself used to taunt the voices back, but I stopped doing that once a chair was thrown at me. Again, I couldn't tell if that was Otis stopping me from doing something stupid, or perhaps my taunts were giving the spirits power to affect the material world. A symphony of alarms rang from the receptionist desk to tell me that it was now 2 a.m. This challenge was a little harder because having to take off your blindfold and directly watch a scary shadowy figure that could get up and talk to you. It was very hard to stay calm with, let alone prevent yourself from talking or making a sound with your mouth. Running back to the receptionist desk, I pulled out a gray roll of duct tape from the many that I kept in the drawer, and I ripped off a large piece, and I securely put it over my mouth. The best way not to talk is to be unable to talk, right? With this, I just needed to make sure that I didn't make any guttural sounds. Behind me, I heard some pages flip and a thud of books. Otis was reading, presumably now that I couldn't talk to it. Over time, I came to appreciate the gentle sounds of pages flipping, as it felt like a safe and calming ASMR. Looking ahead as if right on cue, a shadowy figure sat in a chair at Section B. "How do you do?" it called from afar. I ignored it. I pulled out a book series that I had been reading, trying to give myself something else to focus on, and I put on a pair of noise-canceling headphones. I said, "How do you do?" Silence. I flipped to where my bookmark dutifully sat to remind me of where I was in the story. "You're being extremely rude. All you have to do is say a simple, 'hello.'" The figure's voice was becoming more aggressive in tone, and I was starting to be able to hear him through my headphones. It was going to be a long hour. "Look up. Look at me, you idiot. Look up." By now I realized that I had been rereading the same sentence over and over. I tried so hard to concentrate on the next sentence, and I stared at the words, drinking everything in. If this went as normally as the other nights, the figure would yell and scream and beg until it got bored. A shadowy face with bright white, bloodshot eyes suddenly appeared between my face and the book. Their impossibly widened eyes and dilated pupils staring straight back into my eyes. It took everything in me to refrain from making a throat sound in alarm. But my chair fell over backward with a heavy thud, and I involuntarily grunted with the painful impact. Immediately, dread washed over me as soon as I realized what I had done. And then something new happened. The figure suddenly grew a mouth, with a disturbingly long length that went ear to ear and smiled with such intensity that it struck fear into my heart. I froze like a deer in headlights. Seeing my shocked expression, the figure grew in power, and it ripped my headphones right off my head. Next, it tried to take off the duct tape as well, but its grip was not yet corporeal enough to pull off duct tape, so I slapped my hand over my mouth just in time, and I ran away and sprinted for the receptionist desk. Ignoring the figure, I tore off more duct tape to create a huge X on my face, and it couldn't be ripped off so easily. And during this, the figure tried to push me to prevent me from protecting myself and to shake me up even further. Suddenly, out of nowhere, a unicorn book nailed me directly in the back, and I nearly made a coughing noise from it. Looking down, I saw the cover that had ridiculously pink unicorns and unnecessary sparkles running all over the cover. Another book headed my way and launched at me, this time a Captain Underpants book. And then it was a book of puns and corny jokes, and then a book about dog poo. I realized that that was Otis, trying to distract me from my fear by throwing books with funny or ridiculous covers. Thank God for Otis. It was working too. I eventually began to smile with my eyes at the ridiculousness of the various books that it was chucking at me. Otis, likely being a poltergeist, was incapable of throwing things gently. Soon, 2 a.m. was over and gave way to its superior, 3 a.m. But that's when the real problem started. Hallucinations and delusions are no problem when they can't touch or hurt you. But having broken rule number 7 of not making any verbal sounds during the 2 a.m. slot, I was about to learn what happens when a nightmare can hurt you.